Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is a live Q&A. If you can ask your questions via the community tab on my YouTube channel, that would be the best way, please. So the first question that we have here is, what do we teach or tell young people who feel as though their future is currently being snatched away? That was phrased a little better by Amy. How do younger people move forward as the goalposts for the lives they were promised accelerate into the distance? So I think first of all, I'm Gen X, so even for my generation, we did see a shift in the goalposts. The idea that what we were told was you go to school, you study really hard, you give up your use for the system. And what that means is that one day you will have a good life, you will have a good job, and so on. You go to university, you have a good life. And that actually wasn't true. And it was proven to not be true, even in my generation. For younger people now, if they want to move forward, so the question is structured as, how do younger people move forward as the goalposts for the lives they were promised accelerate into the distance? So younger people now have to let go of those promises, and they can't move forward on the basis of promises that were offered to them. They simply have to move forward on the basis of their own agency. We all have to stop lying, and we have to stop lying to young people. We have to be able to say to them, look, the system clearly is broken. The system clearly is not working. Whatever it is that you want to do, you have the right to pursue that to the best of your ability. But the institutions, the schools, the universities, and the institutions that would offer them work are corrupted. And we know this, and are failing. And we all know this. So we should stop lying to younger people. And we should say, look, it is a little bit of a mess now. We are in a moment in history where institutions are in what seems to be a death spiral, like terminal decay. So the idea that you would trust the school, trust the university, trust the bank you're going to go and work for, trust the company you're going to go and work for, trust the hospital you're going to go and work for, and that's you for life, that's kind of gone. And it's been going for a period of time. Like the idea of a job for life, well, that's not existed. It certainly wasn't an option for me as a graduate. When I graduated in '99, we were not trained to think in those terms at all. And we were also told that that just doesn't exist for anybody. As we've moved forward in time, we've sort of disintegrated into more and more of a gig style economy. Employers offer less to their employees, and so employees in their turn, if they're smart and switched on, offer less loyalty to their employers, and they see an employer more often than not as a chapter for their CV so that they can develop. And I think that's the right way to do things now. Well, right or wrong has nothing to do with it. The jungle is neutral. This is what one must do. So get over the idea of goalposts, get over the idea of institutions making you promises. And the promises were vague and haven't had meaning in my lifetime. I'm 43 years old. They really, I mean, unless you graduated from a red brick university with a first class honours degree and then you went into a very specific role that would be, I was going to say doctoring or lawyering, but even I know people who had great degrees and they didn't make it in the lawyering world. Everybody basically had to start thinking of themselves as an entrepreneur. Even doctors. I've probably told this story before. I helped a brain surgeon once get work in a foreign country, and he basically had to pimp himself out. So I was put in this weird role where I was selling a brain surgeon and his skills and his experience to a private hospital in the Middle East because the country in Central Europe couldn't afford to pay him enough. So we're all sort of hustling and we're all entrepreneurial. And I would just say to kids now, let's just embrace that. If this is the way the world is, what do you want your education for? Do you want your education to make you a better human being? It doesn't do that, so don't worry about that. What are you doing your education for? What's the objective? Let's move forward with those objectives. You will need to make money in order to live in this world, so let's train people to be young entrepreneurs who can survive in this economy. The education system as is like a historical artifact. The roots of it go back to the late 1800s. Some of the roots of our education system are pre-industrial revolution. They are way out of date. Even the modes of learning and the concept of a classroom and the timetable and all of these things can all be questioned from the roots upward and outward. I think really needs a drastic overhaul because it simply is not suited to the needs of the modern world. Before I move on to the next question, just to let you know, I had a number of people ask me if they could get access to our old courses over on the SpartanLifeCoach.com website, and all those old courses have been withdrawn. We do have them up again. I think it's for the next 5 days now. If you do want to pick up, this is your last chance to get those old courses. They will be available for the next 5 days and then they'll be gone. You need to go to SpartanLifeCoach.com to get them. Okay, I'm doing this by most highly rated comments. It's very, very democratic what I'm doing. I'm not usually a fan of democracy, but this seems to be the best way to get it done. If you do have a question for me, please write it in the community tab on YouTube. Hi Richard, I would like to hear more from you on propaganda, says Jen. What it is, how it works, why it works, your thoughts and opinions. Cheers from Canada. Well, I did a video last night on propaganda, psychology and ideology. If I was going to say what propaganda is, I would say it is probably truthful, cherry-picked information that is then given a liberal dose of spin, that is then given a hefty dose of narrative coercion with an end goal in mind. So instead of just giving you the information that you want, that you're asking for, and going, there it is, what happens with propaganda is you're being given the information that the creator of the propaganda thinks you need. You didn't ask for it. They're just giving it to you. They're giving it to you at the time and place of their choosing and in the sequence and syntax of their choosing, specifically to garner an emotional response in you. And that emotional response will have at the end of it a call to action. So you'll get really, really sad about the way this particular piece of propaganda was fed to you, sad for a particular group of people, and then your call to action at the end of that cycle of receiving the propaganda and feeling this intense emotion will be something must be done for this particular group of people. That shouldn't be happening. You should just be given the information. You should just be told this is what is happening. What you choose to do with that information is yours. It's very boundary breaking to then go on to coerce or instruct people in how they should feel. Especially when we know that the end goal is to generate a certain behavior or an action. It's really not okay. That's what it is. That's how it works. Why it works is because we're very emotional creatures. It is not hard to hack human psychology. It's not hard to provoke people emotionally to do what you want them to do. It's in fact, it's one of the easiest things in the world is to provoke people to do what it is that you want them to do. It's Courtney's Fellowship of Oddballs asks, do you have any tips on how one can start to work on their own emotional regulation? You have upset me. A 14-year-old marriage with a malignant narcissist has me acting overly needy or sensitive, or I dissociate or shut down, all or nothing. Yes, I do have some tips on how one can start to work on their own emotional regulation. If you go to Fortress Mental Health Protection on YouTube, you will find there a free course. There are 2 things you need to do. You need to reduce your emotional flashbacks. The free course there has a PDF manual to download, some audio tutorials on what to do, and a video tutorial on what to do. There's a certain practice you'll need to do every day to reduce the intensity of your emotional flashbacks. And secondarily, you will need to work on developing your own emotional literacy, and that will start to get you more emotionally regulated again. So there's a two-handed attack. One is to slow down the intensity of the emotional flashbacks. The second is to develop your emotional literacy, and that will go some way to starting you to become more emotionally regulated. Probably you should also take the time to and find someone, speak to a therapist or a counselor who specializes particularly in narcissistic personality disorder and narcissistic abuse, and they will be able to help you. My preference would be for you to be doing sessions like that face to face, but if you can only get it via Zoom or via Skype, that's okay as well. Okay. What initially got you into hypnosis? Asks Sarah Davis. When I was a kid, I looked at the world and I saw an unnecessarily ugly, violent, and ill-tempered place dominated by adults who were twisted, ugly psychologically and at the soul level. And I couldn't understand what the problem was because everything seemed pretty cool to me. And it seemed like they were the problem, even though they were saying that everything else was the problem and not them. And I started to look for reasons why that would be, and then solutions for what to do about that. And early on in that exploration, I came to conceive of hypnosis as being an effective way to lead people out of these ugly, aggressive, barbaric states where they would lash out at each other or lash out at kids or, just generally be moody fuckers. That's what got me interested in hypnosis. AJ has asked, regarding finding one's passive or own voice, as per the last conversation with Vaknin, what if your voice, I don't even want to say that because it's bad hypnosis, what if your voice smothering abuser was a parent by whom you were raised? It wouldn't make that much difference. There are differences between romantic narcissistic abuse, parental narcissistic abuse, and should we say career level narcissistic abuse. I have a new course on overcoming narcissistic abuse that's coming out soon, and it covers these three different paradigms. But as far as that particular issue goes, it doesn't really make that much of a difference because these are superego injunctions, and either the superego injunctions are healthy or they are unhealthy. And what Sam Vaknin was saying is they are unhealthy because they've been colonized, they've been hijacked by the narcissistic abuser in your life. And so it wouldn't really make that much of a difference whether that person was a parent or a romantic partner. Hijacked is hijacked. If they've colonized your mind and they've stopped you from thinking the way you would normally think, feeling the way you would normally feel, and acting the way you would normally act, it's just as much of a problem, in effect. So you then go on to ask, do you have your own original voice somewhere underneath the layers, despite having been born into abuse? Yes, you do. So here's one of the differences that there would be with romantic abuse, there was a you before the abuse occurred, an adult version of you before the abuse occurred. And in parental abuse, there was no original authentic version of you before the abuse occurred. But the authentic you is still there despite the abuse. So that voice that Sam was talking about you could sort of say is your true will, is your true authentic drive, your authentic self. And you can find it. There are courses. There was a course I did called Summoning the Self that specifically helped people to find that authentic self and to encourage its growth and its development. Um, it's being removed from the website. If you want to get it, this is the last chance to get it from SpartanLifeCoach.com. Work I do in the future on codependency and echo codependency will be through a slightly different paradigm, which is why we're retiring that course. But it's a good course. It's a good course, and it can definitely help you with that. So yeah, there are things you can do to find your authentic self and find your authentic voice, for sure. Edna asks, in light of everything going on in the world, do you think it would be helpful for everyone to understand the grieving process? Do you have any recommendations on books, videos, or seminars on grief and the grieving process? I only think that the grieving process is useful in light of everything that's going on in the world if we are grieving our cultural adolescence as a species. If that's what we're grieving, then yeah, that's useful. Our main focus shouldn't be on grieving. Our main focus should be on individuating and on growing up and building a world that we want to live in. Grieving is part of that because we have to let go of our old attachments, our old ideas, our old belief systems. And yeah, there is a book that teaches you how to grieve. It's called The Tao, T-A-O, of Fully Feeling by Pete Walker. And that's an excellent book if you're looking for guidance specifically on how to grieve. But the only thing people need to be grieving right now is their old way of being in the world and their more immature, childish selves. It is time to individuate. It is time to grow up. I'll take a couple more questions from the community tab here, and then I'll take a couple of questions in the live Q&A. Have you ever had to, Mandy asks me, have you ever had to shut down a conversation with a friend? Question mark. Are there reasons for doing so? Not that I can think of off the top of my head. Like a consensual conversation. I can't actually think of a reason why I would need to. I mean, a conversation with a friend, why would I have to shut it down? You said, are there reasons for doing so? I don't know whether my brain is tired or if I genuinely just don't know what the reasons would be. For me personally, I can't, like if they said something outlandish, I would be curious. If they said something incredibly rude, I would be curious and I would want them to talk more. If they were like, you're useless, I go, tell me more about how useless I am. If they said something wildly offensive or sexist or racist or genocidal, I'd be like, wow, I don't have any genocidal or racist friends. You're about to become a new one. Why do you tell me more? Why do you think that? Why would you say that? Why would you say such a stupid thing? So I don't know what somebody would have to say for me to be like, I'm shutting this conversation down and just not talking anymore. I can't think of one. I've never done it. I can't think of why I would. I don't think there's anything anybody would say where I felt they couldn't just keep talking, like it wouldn't get better, or that there isn't a chance for it to get better by keeping the dialogue open. In my life, professionally, I've met two neo-Nazis. Different. One was German and one was Croatian, and they both served in the military of their respective countries, and they weren't just like role playing the idea. They were pretty sincere with it, and I spoke to them at length because I was like, wow, that's crazy. What do you like? Just like, And we had good conversations because I was curious, and they knew where I stood. They knew exactly what I thought of it. I didn't lie to them, but we kept the conversations polite. They weren't friends of mine, but I really wanted to know. So no, I can't think of a reason why I would shut down a conversation. If I can have a conversation with a literal neo-Nazi, I'd be like, why would you believe something that is like that? Why do you think? Well, how did you? I'm always interested when people believe crazy stuff. I'm like, how did you come to that conclusion? And how do you still wake up every day and keep coming to the same conclusion over and over again? How do you cause yourself to believe believe patent gibberish? Okay, there doesn't seem to be an awful lot of top voted comments here. Sorry if I've not got through to yours. Here's from Not a Russian Bot. Wow, you asked 10 questions. Oh, I'm sorry, I opened that now. It said show more and I hit it and it just went essay. What is your honest? I'm going to answer the first 2 questions and no more. Not a Russian Bot. What is your honest opinion on Tinder, OnlyFans, and porn? I think they're different things. As the current forms of dating, sexual gratification, presentation that are becoming more and more normalized, my honest opinion is that these things instrumentalize, atomize, divide, and warp our perception of each other, of ourselves, of love, of intimacy, of sex, in ways that if we stop them tomorrow would take decades to resolve. These are not cost-free mediums. What's the plural of mediums, Richard? It's media. These are not cost-free media. Are the days of meeting people in real life or having exclusive relationships over? No. Every day people meet each other in real life. I met my last girlfriend in the real. I don't believe in meeting people from Tinder or any online platform. It's never been interesting or fulfilling for me, so I gave up. Yeah, I'm worried. I'm worried. It doesn't keep me awake at night. I mean, these are kind of first world problems. But OnlyFans and pornography consumption are things. Well, OnlyFans is a form of democratized pornography. You just make your own porn at home without a director and a producer and a light man and a sound man and blah, 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 and a script writer. You just do it at home. So it's porn, I guess. It's democratized porn. So is it good? Is it bad? I'm a capitalist. I think people should be permitted to do what they want. I wouldn't want governments to, and if I was in control, I wouldn't step in and stop people directly, but I would probably have lengthy, boring, government mandated announcements about how dangerous it is with my face on them. So you will be allowed to masturbate as long as you can cope with my face looking at you. So there'll be like pornography on the screen, but me about this big. So all the porn you want, you can watch whatever you want, and it'll just be me on a loop going, this is damaging your brain. This is damaging your brain. This is damaging your brain. And if you can still masturbate an orgasm, I think you deserve that orgasm. You worked for it. I don't think it's good. I don't think these things are good. Do you think it will have a negative impact on how we view relationships? It already has. How we interact, the level of trust we have by lowering the standards for relationships. As more and more people choose to use these options as they require less effort and can bring about more deceit, I think it's an illusion that these options require less effort. That implies that, and I want to push back against this strongly because I hear people talk this way all the time about Tinder, as though what's actually happening in the real world is a ton of people are actually engaging in sexual intercourse as a result of using Tinder. That's just not true. That's not just my opinion. That's statistics. They're not. They're not. So it's you said sorry to like pull you up on just one thing. It's a bit hair splitty of me, but it's a thing I'm interested in. That you said it requires less effort. When you do less effort to get a banana, so you can either climb a tree to get the banana and then take it down and eat it, or you shoot the branch and then the banana just lands in your hand and you eat it. That's less effort, but you got the banana. In this scenario, ain't nobody getting that banana. Nobody's. It's an illusion. People have what people have now. This is a Slavoj Žižek point. We have virtual reality and we have the reality of the virtual. So the reality of the virtual, one element of it is the illusion that people have more options. Some people do have somewhat more options, but not like you think. Never engage in the fantasy that there's just everybody's out there just shagging with strangers in a way that they could not have done 20 years ago. In fact, I've observed the opposite to be true. When I was 23, I went to work in Greece. So that's 20 years ago exactly, which must have been 2002. And I can tell you that not just flirtation, liking each other's pictures, swiping right on Tinder, writing flirty comments, writing DMs. We didn't do any of that. But people were getting it on. And I'm not saying that's wonderful or not saying that, but that's what was happening. So there's a lot more actual sex. People were getting the banana in this scenario. It's people are getting the illusion of the banana, or they're getting a digital banana, or they're getting a thumb instead of a banana. I'm going to stop with these metaphors now. Does it bring about more deceit? Well, no. Humans have always been deceitful. Humans have always been opportunistic. We're a highly sexualized, highly sexually opportunistic mammal. We know this like through multiple mediums, through anthropology, sociology, biology, psychology, multiple amounts of research. It's unquestionable. So the deceit element, is it more? The only place where I can see more deceit is the normalization of I really feel like we've moved into a place in culture where people believe in lying, they believe in illusions, they believe in deceit, generally, not just within relationships, but they have an ethical system that centralizes deceit as a mode of being in the world. Being deceptive is a way of getting things done. Being deceptive is kind of its own ideology or upside down ethic or junk value. I'm really good at being deceitful. And people get praised for that every day. Tell me they don't. We know that they do. So yes, there's that. I'll take a few more questions in the live chat now. Let me take this hot laptop off my knees. It's uncomfortable. RJ Flores in here says Tinder gives a higher amount of options to about 70% of women and 10% of men. The rest are worse off in terms of dating options as a result of Tinder. I heard it was 80% of women and 20% of men, and I've seen evidence of that. There are more options, but even amongst the, I don't know what else to call them, I'm a little bit tired, shagging elites, these sexual congress elites, these the genetically superior fringe, yeah, they have more options. That doesn't mean they're taking them up on it. There's a lot more symbolic gratification and symbolic validation going on than people think. I personally believe. Hit me with a question, one sentence long, and in a question mark. Accidental Warrior says, I notice most of the men on Tinder seem feminine and passive aggressive, so I deleted within less than a week. You may not have noticed, madam, but men have been becoming more feminine and passive aggressive in larger and larger numbers over the decades. And their testosterone is going down through the floor. Frodo Baggins. Where is your testosterone, Bilbo? Okay. KTW asks, you aren't a fan of the Stoics. Can you elaborate why? I actually do not regard Stoicism as a separate philosophy. And I don't think anybody's ever going to convince me that it is one. These are the homespun wisdoms of comfortable men who were, I didn't mean to say men like that. They're men. Ugh. These are the homespun wisdoms of really, more often than not, guys in positions of power who did pretty well. And it's just junk. There's just no revolutionary spark or red-bloodedness in any of it. Don't drink too much, you'll get a hangover. If you desire something too much, you might not receive it, then you'll be heartbroken. Pay your bills on time and wash your socks and like be organized and go to work. I'm like, it's all a bit conformist, all this. Where does Stoicism lead people to? An ability to just keep feeding into the same system without whinging? I heard, like, Stoicism as a separate philosophy looked an awful lot to me like some of the sales training, that American style sales training that I was exposed to in Portugal in the 1980s. You know, keep smiling, believe in your goals, knock on this next door, maybe somebody will buy your encyclopedia. No, I want misery, I want despair, I want revolution, I want destruction. These are not men setting the world on fire. These are men who like the world just as it is, and they want to stay with it. And you'll say, well, it's perfect for people who are suffering. There are better philosophies. Zen is far superior. It's not, as I say, Stoicism. Write your favorite Stoic quotes, right, in the comments. And the challenge is that something your grandmother or my grandmother couldn't have conceived of? And the answer will be no. It's common sense. It's common sense. It's not. The Cynics, now that was an interesting philosophy. The Cynics were interesting. The Stoics, I mean, Seneca, middle-class, tawdry, backslapping of a wealthy dude. You know, this is my wisdom on how to. Were you born into wealth, my dude? Do you own a human who cleans your socks for you? Are you wealthy with several houses? Take your philosophy and stick it up your bottom. Sorry to the lovers of Seneca. Marcus Aurelius, better, but I don't even. To me, they're not. That's not a philosophy. That's like little bits of homespun wisdom, aphorisms. There's no, like, a philosopher. If you're going to impress me as a philosopher, you got to think a think that I never thunked. If I already thinked your thunk, I'm like, oh please, what is? Call this a philosophy? This is crap. There's a little bit like I'll finish with this. Slavoj Žižek and Jordan Peterson in their debate, which was not a debate. And I think people really missed Slavoj's point, where the most, he was very polite with Mr. Peterson, as he should be, but the most insulting thing he said went over Jordan Peterson's head and over everybody's heads, I think. I hate wisdom. When somebody gives me wisdom, here I'm ready to pull out my gun. He jokingly said he'd be ready to shoot someone in the head for offering him wisdom. He hates wisdom. I hate it too. It makes me feel sick. Don't give me your wisdom and tell me that's philosophy. Keep your wisdom to yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your time and for your attention. And I look forward to speaking to you all again very, very soon. Cheers.